Catus Maximus here. I believe we have the original design of the BMC parallel jaw locking vice-grip pliers. Although they call these the pressure locks. And that's essentially what they are, is they combine something sort of like these Nipex or maybe even these auto-adjusting cobalts here, which are parallel jaw pliers, but along with the capabilities of having the actual locking handle, just like a set of vice grips. These things actually are made still today. This particular brand was kind of interesting. It was made by a company that was kind of experimenting in hand tools and made these for a few decades. I believe they made these from the 50s through like the 60s or 70s, but decided to give up on that, and nobody actually wanted to copy this design. Specifically, the ones that you can get now, which are like from Stahlwill, Germany, or from Lang Tools, are kind of a hybrid design between classic vice grips and how these work. So they're essentially parallel jaw vice grips, and they are certainly handy. The more modern ones are a bit more durable, and that was the one thing I have read about these, is the fact that if you drop them or drop stuff on these old BMC versions, that if you dent or damage these side plates, or if you get them way too cruddy, the jaws end up jamming up, and that's probably the worst part about it. These seem to work okay. These are known as the number 9 or the 9-inch versions. They also had some smaller 7-inch versions, I believe some really large 11-inch ones. Adjustments in the middle, and it works. The screw moves this little cam, and what that cam does is blocking this upper swing arm. And so how it works, if we open it partially, is that it has multiple sets of pivots. So you can see how the jaw will move up and down. If we do it like this, now you can see how it's flat. And so it has 2 pivots here and 2 pivots here, 4 linkages. And that's what makes the difference. On a normal set of vice grips, you have a pivot here and a pivot here, and then of course one back for the normal handle. So the jaw just rocks around in an arc, and so it doesn't pinch where the jaws are flat. So vice grips are of course very tough and very well proven. That's why they kind of stood the test of time better than parallel jaw style, just because the parallel jaw style is more complicated and more expensive. It's neat to see that companies like Lang are making a style of parallel jaw vice grips, and I'm actually surprised that they haven't shown up more in stores. They actually are really handy in many situations, specifically when you're trying to use them to bust nuts, when you're trying to grip something. And for example, here I've already measured this out. So one nice thing about this is they did attempt to put rough material sizes on this. On this piece here, I got to go a little smaller than 1/4 inch. And so the deal with this is if I grab a piece of steel here, I need to get this a little tighter. They're a little funky on these old BMC ones where they don't have a release lever. On more modern ones, they've kind of fixed some of those issues. There we go. I find it interesting that the upper jaw is forged, but the lower jaw is plate steel. But here's the deal. When you clamp on something, you can see that the jaws are totally flat. So if you're in a situation where you have to pry something flat, sideways, or you're trying to grab something and pull it out like this, or any such situation where what you're grabbing onto actually has 2 flat or parallel surfaces, these are just so much better, simply because of the fact that they do grab onto in a parallel fashion, so you get continuous contact on the whole surface of the jaws, and that really makes a big old difference. As opposed to the vice grips. Actually, I may have to open these up a bit, because I think this piece of steel, vice grips tries to compensate for it by kind of pre-adjusting them. That's the easiest way to really put it. But if I adjust these, the vice grips are easier to adjust. But if I get a pair of these on here and try clamping this, like so, we can see that the problem is that the jaws just don't sit flat, and so it'll allow this to rock back and forth. If I'm trying to twist something out, it's just putting a whole bunch of pressure right at the tip, and just doesn't grip quite as well. And so that's what kind of surprises me, is why on earth this style plier, the parallel jaws, just kind of went by the wayside. And even though some manufacturers do make some pretty good modern ones, that you basically don't ever hear about them. when quite frankly I believe in half the situations that you are using vice grips, if you're not grabbing a round pipe or something like that, you would really want some parallel jaw ones. And it may be just due to durability issues, and then of course just the expense. A set of parallel jaw vice grips are going to be more expensive than their standard jaw counterparts. I really do like them. You know, at least these BMCs, they're built well enough. It's kind of interesting how they use this little block system, but the screw is actually pretty good, or pretty open tolerances, so even if it has a lot of crud on it, it doesn't get clogged up too easily. But here's another example. If we're just grabbing something, say, along the edge, the same deal. Even though this piece of metal does have like a little ridge there, we are still just getting an excellent grip, and I can get just a really good purchase on something, even if it's a narrow surface, just once again because of the wide area the jaws are engaging. So I thought these were pretty neat. Thought it was pretty neat that these were actually the original version. And even though they do have some inherent issues, particularly durability, because all the components are just smashed between two pieces of sheet metal, it was interesting to see that parallel jaw locking pliers essentially are still around, but nobody ever wanted to actually copy the original BMC design. Once they stopped selling them, it was a few years or a couple decades where there just wasn't any, and then some of the bigger tool companies like Lang and Stallwell actually started making their own, but an improved version, which offer more durability like the vice grips, but essentially the same functionality as the BMCs. So just wanted to bring that to all to your attention, that there are some pretty cool pliers that are out there, such as parallel jaw vice grips. And if you see an old set like this, you know that they are BMCs. And if you see a newer set, they'll look like vice grips, but they'll just have the jaw will look weird because it'll stick way out because they have two pivot points up in the handle area. And if you do like the BMCs, these things show up all the time online. They actually sold a fair number of these, and that's what was also surprising, is for how many of these things they did sell, that nobody wanted to, remake them after the patent expired. Just probably thought it was too complex and too expensive to try to copy this design, because it does. There is a lot of parts. There's all these stamp pieces of sheet metal here, linkages there, this whole upper piece here, the upper linkage, etc. That may be why manufacturers avoided it, because obviously vice grips are pretty simple to manufacture. A couple forged jaws, a few pieces of stamped sheet metal and a screw, and you got a pair of vice grips, where this requires us all these different parts. But once again, super cool. So if you ever see an oddball set of pliers that look like this, know that they are parallel jaw vice grips, and they can be very handy in a wide variety of situations. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. Till next time, Catus Maximus out.